Welcome to this session regarding how you make the most out of the open platform. In this session we will take you through what Milestone has added to both the XProtect VMS platform and also the MIP SDK during 2021. We will cover both the 21 R1 release that we released in June, as well as the most recent R2 release that is just a couple of weeks old with GA in late October. I'm Jan Lindeberg and I'm a part of the product direction team with Milestone, and I will speak to you about the VMS part and the things that we added to XProtect.
And I'm Peter Vergmann. I'm heading the SDK team, and I will then go through what we added to the SDK. But first you, Jan, take it away.
Yeah, thank you. So let's start diving into the things that we have added to the VMS. And this is not a complete run-through of XProtect, but rather a pick of the things that are most important for you as developers and technology partners who can make use of those capabilities. First thing we should touch upon is what we have done in the space of situational awareness. Here we have been working with the smart map and added additional capabilities into the augmentation of devices and other objects into the smart map. So here we now support, apart from alarms, we support microphones, input devices, device clustering for better navigation when you zoom in and out in the map environment. And this can be very good for you as technology partners if you want to augment your devices into the smart map and make them actionable as a part of the overall video management system. Other things is that we have developed a dedicated dewarping view for the smart client. This is a dewarping view for fisheye cameras and 360 cameras, which means that you can dewarp sort of warped images and create virtual cameras as outcuts of a 360 view. There are also possibilities to optimize the dewarping, so dependent on the lens you are using, you can optimize the dewarping algorithms. You get a clean and sort of straight presentation of the camera. We've been working with metadata and making video and metadata searchable in a good and easy way, and we've been doing that across a number of releases. Last thing we added was multi-category search to be able to combine different search criteria into the metadata space. Following that, we this year have added a listing that is sorting hits based on relevance. So if you have multiple criteria, hits that matches most criteria will be presented first, and then sequences that are just matching one of the criteria will be presented later down or lower down in the hit list. So that is a way of making searches more actionable for the end users and the sort of users of the smart client. Other things we've done on the user side is to add a navigation capability into our mobile applications, both for Android and iOS. So similar to what you have in the smart client and in the web client, the mobile client now has a time navigation bar where you can see when a video is available and when video is not recorded in the system. So that can be very useful for users navigating the video. Other things that we've been working on the mobile side is to, or remote client side, I should say, is to work with bookmarks. Bookmarks is something that previously been working exclusively in the space of the smart client, but now you can actually work with bookmarks both in live and playback from both the web client and the mobile client, and you can do that as quick bookmarks or detailed bookmarks with extensive sort of comments into the clip of the bookmark that the bookmark covers in the video. And of course you can search bookmarks and delete bookmarks and do that entire life cycle of the bookmarks in those clients as well. So I think this is a really good sort of collaborative tool. So if you have field personnel, first responders, that they can share information with the back office in the maybe the monitoring station or central office. Other things that we've been working on is the sort of uptime of our system. We have a concept where we are working with failover recording servers, where a standby recording server can take over the execution from a primary recording server should something happen to it. One thing that we have been battling with is that there is a relatively long repair time if a server breaks down, a recording server breaks down. Not all the time, but in certain conditions, if the operation is interrupted at certain positions and certain sort of places, the repair time can be relatively long. That is due to scanning of index files and block files and everything in the database. And there have been a very dedicated activity around optimizing that repair time. And what we see now is in the latest R2 release is that we actually managed to reduce that repair time with up to 50%, half the time basically of repairing a recording server. So that is very, very, very promising, and especially for critical installations where uptime is essential. Another thing that we added to the system in several steps is the ability to lifecycle the software that sits in the IoT devices and cameras. The firmware upgrade has been possible using the manufacturer's own tools, but now you can do all that from the VMS system. So basically, if you have a set of devices, you can lifecycle that firmware upgrade as an integral part of the lifecycle of the VMS as such. This is a capability that we currently have for Axis, Bosch, Hanwha and ONVIF compliant devices. We are also looking at extending that to other devices as well as those devices support firmware upgrade. And this is of course something that you also can do across the API. So if you have applications that want to do maintenance of devices, you can do dedicated applications for that. Other things that is important for you, especially if you work on the sort of input side, IoT, the camera side, is that we have removed some sort of barriers or limitations in number of channels that we support on different types of drivers. As you can see on this slide here, we basically removed practical limitations across both the ONVIF driver, the driver for the MIP SDK, and also the universal driver, where the ONVIF and the universal driver now can support up to 512 channels compared to 16 and 64 channels previously. And if you're developing your own driver using the driver API SDK, you can basically use as many channels as you need for your implementation. So that is something that really opens up and makes it more easy to integrate with XProtect. As a part of this, we also changed the way we license devices. Previously, we have had a device license. And now we are applying what we call a channel license, which means that basically for every video stream that comes into the VMS, there is a license. Basically for most devices, there is no change. But if you have encoders and VRs and so forth, there could be a change in the way that you license those devices. I would say that a good place to go if you're uncertain about how many licenses a certain driver would require or device would require is to go to this supported device list that is available on our website. And here you can see exactly how many licenses that would be needed. Another thing that I would like to point out is for all of you who do AI and video analytics integrations using the video processing service or the AI bridge. Here we are licensing basically free of charge for getting video out of XProtect and also free of charge returning metadata back into the XProtect system. And only if you're returning modified video into XProtect, there is a license to be sort of acquired for that. So that can be practical to know that. As a part of the continuous development of our XProtect VMS system, we are of course also investing in expanding the support for IoT and camera devices. And so far we have during 2021 added more than 800 new devices to our supported device list, which means that we are very close to support 11,000 devices in our sort of VMS system. One thing that is maybe particularly interesting to notice is that we are now supporting the first OSAM, Open Security and Safety Alliance devices, and that is a device series from Bosch, which means that we are now also embracing sort of advanced IoT devices that also can carry AI applications on the edge, the IoT edge. Finally, I would just like to touch upon another integration point. It's not necessarily a part of the MIP SDK as such, but it's a way of getting video out of the XProtect VMS system. We have the Open Network Bridge that is used for accessing live and recorded video. So far it has been supporting H.264 encoded video. Now we also added, quite naturally, also the support for H.265 encoded video, meaning that you can also apply and work with the Open Network Bridge in more modern installations using the more modern codec. So that was what I wanted to talk about regarding the additions to XProtect VMS, and I'm handing you over to Peter, who will take you through changes to the MIP SDK.
Thank you, Jan.
Yep.
So a lot of great stuff has happened in the VMS, but we have also been working on increasing the integration capabilities, of course. So let me just go quickly through what we have added to the SDK during 2021. So first of all, I would like to remind you about last year's message that we are going online, meaning that we are moving a bit away from the installer-based SDK and utilizing the different online resources for distribution of the different SDK components. So first of all, the libraries and other binaries are distributed through NuGet. The samples have been uploaded to GitHub. Visual Studio templates are now available as a Visual Studio extension in the Visual Studio Marketplace. The documentation is, as it has been for a very long time, still available on our website. And last but not least, some of the tools like the third-party driver integration verification tool, the stable FPS driver, the MDepends tool, and a number of other tools have been uploaded in the download section of the Milestone website. And just reminding you that MIP SDK 2022 R1 next year will be the last release of SDK installers, which also includes the redistributables. So from that point on, it will only be released through the above channels. Going into more specific features we have been adding, first one here, which is not such a big one, but it has been requested a lot, is an addition or an enhancement to our image view add-on. Just to recap, our image view add-on is a way for you to control the built-in smart client camera view items in the smart client from your plugin. What we have been adding is that in the 2021 R1 release, we added the ability to monitor and control the independent playback function. And in the 21 R2 release, we then also enabled you to monitor and control the digital zoom going on. And let's just try to have a quick demo of that. So I have here our smart client. And what I'm demoing is the sample we have in the SDK, so you can go play with it yourself. Of course, we expect you to implement it in another way, but this is just to demonstrate how to do it. So first of all, we have over here playback control, so you can enable playback, and you'll see that it now went into independent playback, as you know it, if you had enabled it down here. And you can then start playback and stop playback, and you'll also notice that it will actually continuously show the current time here, so you can monitor what time is currently shown from your plugin. You can of course also fast forward and stuff like that. The second option was the digital zoom control. So if we enable it here, you will now see that you can be able to control the digital zoom from the plugin, so I can zoom in. And I can also move the zoomed in area around, so that control what is currently shown if you want to focus on some specific part of the video. And I can also even see from my plugin what area is currently being shown. So you can see this is the coordinates of the current image. So this is something we have heard a lot of requests for it for a long time, so we're really pleased that we can now give this to you. Okay, so let's get back to the slides. So the next thing I would like to talk about is our configuration API. We have been working on it for quite some time, and it's most likely familiar to most of you. But just to recap, it's an API that enables you to access and change the VMS configuration from your integration. And it's a SOAP-based web service with very few methods. I think it's like 6 or 7 you need to use in total, so a very simple one. And it consists of a traversable tree structure that allows you to basically dot your way through the various components of the VMS. So this is, as you surely know, is a screenshot of our Spark client, and we normally use this to show how much of the configuration API we already covered. So before this year we had covered this part, and quite a lot already, but then when I click next you'll see we added a bit more this year. So you'll notice there are still a few gaps, but those are generally things that are more informational than it's actual configuration, or it's very rarely used configuration parts that we don't think will be necessary for most integrations. So we kind of believe that we are very close to feature completeness of what is used by or needed by most integrations. So, but let's go a bit more into details with what we added. So first of all, for our one release, we added, as Jan already mentioned, we added support for updating firmware on the devices from the VMS this year, and we also added it to the configuration API. So you can now entirely automatically update firmware from your integration using the configuration API. Furthermore, we added support for configuring the device events, so you can now enable events on the devices. We added support for the tools options dialog. So in Management Client we have this separate dialog for configuring settings like retention time and things like that. And we have been adding parts of what is available there. There are still some stuff missing, but we have added the most important parts and everything we have had requests for. Furthermore, we also added support for configuring view groups. So just as you know it from a Management Client, you can now also configure view groups in your from your integration, and even better, you can now auto configure views in the same way as you know it from a Spark client, where you can add a new view with a certain layout and so on. You can now do that from your integration as well. So if you have certain views that you think are important for the customers of your integration, you can now automate that process. So that was R1, so let's move on to R2. So in R2 we added support for failover groups, so you can now create new failover groups, create the structure of them, and move around the failover servers between the groups, so you can automate the process of how redundancy is handled in your system. We also added support for hardware PTC settings, so stuff like COM ports and other things that are mainly used for analog cameras on encoders. This can now be configured through Config API. you can start the task of getting presets from a device. So you can tell the system to import the presets that has previously been defined on the device, import them in the system so they are available for the smart client users. You can configure patrolling profiles so that you can set up how long should a camera be, a PDC camera stick on a certain position, and when should it move on to the next position, and how fast should it go, and different things like that. You can configure the multicast setup. And last but definitely not least, this is something I'm really happy to tell you about, because we have had a lot of requests for configuring smart client profiles from integrations. And now we support you doing that, so you can set up what is a specific role allowed to do within the smart client. Roles has been supported for quite some time in Configuration API, but now it's you can of course also configure which smart client profile is then the current one for this role. So a lot has happened on the Configuration API. And as I mentioned initially, we believe that we are more or less at the point where we have implemented all the features that have been requested from the community over the years. Next thing we have been working on is OAuth 2 support. So we now support the use of OAuth 2 and OpenID for login. If you have a component or plugin integration, you basically don't need to do much about it. Component integration, you should rebuild with the latest version of SDK, but apart from that, it will be handled entirely by our code. For protocol integrations, we have updated the samples to utilize this, so you can see how to do it and how you can update your integration to use the new login methodology. And worth mentioning is also that we still support the old way of logging in, so your current integration will still work, at least for the current being. We right now only support login through our own identity server, so we are currently working on supporting other identity servers, but for now the login has to be done towards our IDP server. And if this is something of interest to you, I encourage you to see another session later today, which is called VMS Authentication, Introducing OAuth 2.0. Next feature is the API Gateway, which is something we have been really looking forward to tell you about. So it's a new service that will expose a RESTful interface. Most of our current APIs are SOAP, which most people consider kind of outdated, and RESTful interface is like at least somewhat more modern. So we are happy to now introduce this new API. First version will be for configuring the VMS. So basically the same functionality as I already mentioned for the configuration API will now be available through this RESTful interface on the API gateway. We will make what we call a pre-release for the 2021 release, which will be the full API as we know it, so you can download it and start working with it and make your integration. But it requires to be installed separately next to the VMS, and it requires a 21 R2 release of the VMS to work. And then for the 22 R1 release, we will be releasing this as an integrated part of corporate. Corporate and the other products in the suite. If this seems interesting to you, we have another interesting session later today, which is called the MIP API Gateway pre-release demo, where we'll go a bit more into detail what this is about. So go check it out. Finally, sort of a call to action, we have introduced what we call installed integration insights, which basically is a way of collecting deployment statistics of the integrations that are installed on the various customer installations. So far, our only means of knowing what is installed out there has been if people are using the MIP licensing, and even with that, it's sort of limiting how much is known. So we have tried to now add a little bit more information that we try to collect on our central server, so that we and you can get an overview of, okay, where is the integrations running, and how many plugins are installed, is it in Smart Client or Management Client, and so on. We will start collecting it now, and then we will over the next period of time, we'll start looking into how can we actually utilize this information and also share it with you. To support, if you have made a plugin integration, you basically don't need to do anything. Please just check that the name and the manufacturer in the plugin definition is correct, and then you're good to go. If you have a component integration, you need to change it to use the new SDK.environment.login method, which just takes a few more parameters telling the system what integration is this that is running. Finally, for protocol integrations, it's still the same login call as you already use, but you should now also call register integration on the server command service interface after doing the login. And again, this will just inform the system what integration is currently has logged in. If this is something you find interested, you should get in touch with our partner team at partner@milestonesys.com and let them know the name and manufacturer name of your integration and the fact that you are okay with us collecting this information. If we don't know we are allowed to, we will not store the information. So please let us know so that we can start getting more intelligence for both of us on what integrations are used and where. And that's basically all we had. Thank you for watching this session, and let's continue the conversation on the developer forum, where we are, of course, always available for answering your questions. Thank you.